Oh, I didn't know that.
Asshole.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, how to get that? Oh,
Oh, look at that. Buffalo.
that's what
I went to the island.
Long Island or Bull Island?
Both. Paul, you read it reading last night. I gotta tell you, it's impressed.
Oh, who's here?
You gotta come back.
Did you something?
Back there.
Very well. Oh, right.
Yeah. Scary.
You gotta spit it there.
I can see setting.
You got me down.
Oh, yeah. I should like to hang. Yeah. It's everything, but yeah. Aloha.
Why are you?
Aloha. I think it's important.
Teams begin to think. It's all good. You're stuck out.
I mean, it's all. Right, good evening, everyone. It's 7:02 and we were in closed session and now we are back in open session. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. This evening we'll have a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence in remembrance of David E. Trump III. Moment of silence is in remembrance of David Earl Trump III, a longtime resident of Lambertville, who previously served as the Civil Defense and OEM Coordinator and as the emergency dispatcher for the city. He was also a member of the Lambertville New Hope Ambulance and Rescue Squad, the Columbia Fire Company #4, and the Fleet Wing Hook and Ladder #3. Mr. Trout is remembered for his kindness and for his dedication to our community. Guys? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America. Teaching people. One line of me, we have. Liberty to.
Thank you. Again, good evening, everyone. At this point, I was looking the first of two public participation sessions. Just remind everybody that public comment is given from the podium here, unless you have mobility issues. Members of the public may speak or ask questions for 3 minutes uninterrupted. The council may or may not respond to comments or questions, and Cindy will keep track of the time. So other members of the public who wish to speak this evening, please step to the podium, state your name and address, please, and you can draw any comments.
Hi, everybody. Hi, I'm Beth O'Brien at 2 Hancock Street on Conant Hill. And this evening I have a comment and a question. And my comment was, after we went home last night and I thought about some of the comments that were made. Mayor, you made a comment that somebody was talking about how quickly the process was happening. And you said it's been 2 years of thorough and meticulous planning with our professionals. And I think people weren't really happy with that response. I know personally that you've been very kind to me in meeting with me prior to the plan being given to the public. But I also remember saying that you were saying to me that you could only share limited information because you had signed an NDA. And that gives me the impression that there are all of these closed door meetings that took place without any public input. And having it just be announced to the public 3 weeks ago does give everybody the impression that it's happening really quickly. So that's my comment. My question is, could I get some clarification again on the timeline? I know that we've discussed the New Jersey state deadlines, and I know that there's a series of kind of like boxes we have to check: October, December, January, February, whatever. I'm wondering if the requirement with the state's deadline is to provide them with an approved proposal for the project. And my question is, does it have to be this proposal? Do we have an opportunity to cobble together an alternative proposal? After hearing the word Coffee Farm last night and village apartments, I even thought about when the single property comes up for redevelopment in 5 years, that there could be additional affordable units in that. So I'm wondering if we could cobble together something, or will this plan just be rubber stamped and pushed through? And I know on our hill we have a couple of Habitat for Humanity houses, although those credits went to Hopewell. Could we look at the opportunity to do Habitat for Humanity houses, 12 acres, 20 houses, creating a real neighborhood that's in harmony with the fabric of the community that we have now, versus creating a private neighborhood? And then taking, so I got 20 units up there, 5 from Clausen, 5 from Village, additional units from Tinkles when they get developed, or even downsizing the project a little bit. I think it would be much more palatable to have an apartment building with 20 houses and 50 townhouses. 20 apartments and 50 townhouses would be much more palatable. And so I'm just wondering, could we cobble together an alternative plan? Yeah, thank you.
Here, we typically wait until all of our comment and before we decide to respond.
Thank you.
Sean Ella, 21 Belvedere Avenue. I was, interested in what the city planner said last night about the Clausen property. He said that that would only be 5 affordable units, but is that 5 as a 20% of what could, like, market rate units that could be built there, or do only 5 units fit market rate or affordable on that, in that location? Because the city owns that property. They have a lot more power with, regard to what is done there. Could contract or negotiate with a nonprofit builder like the Michaels Group, or there are many of them, and have I think it just gives us a lot more flexibility. And I don't know if that number 5 is actually accurate in terms of how many units can fit there. I also was very taken back that this whole plan is based on this gentleman's theory that 40 units would, the additional units would go towards more ground. We should base something that's this big on a theory, really. So those are some questions and comments. And then finally, I wanted to ask about the landfill. It was a city landfill, municipal landfill, from my understanding. Has the city done any research into this? I mean, there's got to be some kind of records, public records about this location, the facility, if it was part of public works or something like that. What information do y'all have, that we can get, because everybody is mum on this and nobody wants to say anything about it. Other than people who have actually seen it and lived there, and those people have not been, no one's reached out to them, I imagine, to try to get an understanding of what might have gone in there. And then my final question is, what laws are around selling an open landfill? Can someone just sell an open landfill, you know, to Hovnanian, without any closure mitigation? Is that legally okay? So I'll end my comments there. Thank you.
I'm just gonna note here that this is a work session. We do not have city council with us. I will do my best to answer these questions.
Use the microphone, please.
Oh, yes. This is a work session, so we do not have city council here this evening. Our work sessions are typically devoted to discussing policy issues and working through kind of regular routine matters. So because we don't have the attorney here, I will do my best to answer your questions, but not having counsel here, I need to be very general and careful in those questions. Certainly, public is welcome to come back when we have the council or to send questions directly to us, and we'll do our best to answer them appropriately. So just keep that in mind, please.
Sure, I understand. And I'd be happy to follow up.
Different meeting.
Email later too. Thank you.
Jeff Tittle, 33 Wilson Street. I just want to start off with a different topic. Today, 80 years ago, the Allied forces landed at Normandy Beach, and I think we should remember that today for other things. But I'm mentioning it, my father was in the first wave at Long Beach. He grew up in an orphanage, joined at 17. Because I think given what's happening in our society today, we need to think about our future and the standing up for democracy. And I just want to start with that because I just think it was important today with what's happening. Going into yesterday and today, I think that, you know, the planning board meeting worked well. People got to ask questions. Not everything was answered, and the board's going to come up with a list of questions. So the first thing I have in the public, you know, send them questions or send questions to our professionals that, you know, they feel maybe or should be included in the packet or however it's going to be answered. The second thing is I think that yesterday shows that we, you know, not only need to slow down this process when you're talking about, you know, 200 units of houses up on a mountain, but also to have more public input and dialogue for two reasons. One, there are people that are very concerned who live up there or live down below. Secondly, you know, 3 minutes is not enough to really question a professional when, you know, you have multiple questions. And I think we need to now, well, at least open up that process. It doesn't mean you're, you know, it just means that we need to get public buy-in and public support, whether we do something with the project, say yes, say no, change it to some extent. And we have to address those major concerns that are there, especially from flooding, infrastructure, access, because I think they're critical. Again, as I said, you know, to the planner who said that it meant this with the master plan, I said, well, the first part of the master plan is public health and safety. It's the same thing, you know, as a council person. And so I think that's critical. The second issue that I was just going to raise, you know, is that we need to move forward on a stormwater ordinance, but we need to get it right, because if we have a different set of rules for Academy Hill and a different set of rules for the town, somehow that's not going to look right. Secondly, given the flooding and the problems in this town, we really need to have probably one of the strictest ordinances in the state. You know, as I said in some of our meetings, Solebury starts at 100 square feet, and you have to mitigate from that point on. And you know, in some towns, it's 1,000 square feet for a major project, and in Lambertville, it may depend where you are, but we really need to think about it. Other thing that came to me with this whole issue is that we really need to update our tree ordinance. I did the tree ordinance in Jackson, and when they put a new development place, each tree they cut down 4 trees in town or in the area. Getting to the issue of affordable housing, where that's okay. Getting to the issues of affordable.
Please finish up.
Yeah, well, getting to the issue of affordable housing. I work with the city of Newark and with Montclair and Jersey City where they have an automatic 20%. I mean, there's waivers and stuff in there. It's not as good as we wanted it to be, but they have an automatic 20% set aside on all the development, 4 units.
Thank you.
So.
Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. Um, in preparation for this work session, I sort of went back over the things that happened at the May 16th meeting because I was expecting that the work session would include some of the issues that have come up around stormwater, which we've been talking about. And I went through, and so I looked at the agenda, of course, and I was surprised to see that there isn't anything on the agenda that seems to be teeing up any of the steps towards some of the stormwater issues that were identified in May 16th. And I know, for example, Councilwoman Kaminsky put out a number of things which I thought were helpful both for us and hopefully for you all in terms of what you will focus on. And some of those things, I don't know, and I'm the first to admit, I don't know the steps that have to happen for you to designate or make a plan or assign money for maintenance, for scoping the system, for identifying projects, for all those things. But I can't imagine that we shouldn't be starting that. And then oddly, of course, we know one of the points that was made May 16th was land use ordinance, stormwater protection, and builders and big projects. And here we are, right in at that point of a big project and stormwater and issues like that. So I sort of hope that I am wrong in understanding how you handle these meetings with things that are not on the agenda. But I hope that there's not going to be passage of time without trying to move the ball on those steps or on other steps if those were not the steps the whole council chooses to pursue. But I think it's pretty clear, particularly with the planning board issue coming up soon. But all these other things, I again admit, I don't know the steps. I don't know the way you all follow that path around budget allocation, staffing issues, a grant writer, all that stuff. But it seems as though that's the kind of thing people on my side of the thing are clamoring to hear. And I'm just asking you to please, if you haven't gone back over that list recently, I'm urging you to do that because it's pretty straightforward on the steps that you guys need to sort of decide if you're going to take or how you're going to deal with it. Thank you.
Carol Salvi, 63 South Union Street, no questions. As we remember with Ida, what happened on Curly Lane, when a vehicle was pushed all the way down to the river to the storage authority. Now, the hillside was not deforested then. It's deforested, just think what's at the bottom of that hill across the street, gas stations. East gas station has vehicles parked there next to a large propane tank or refillable propane tanks. Now, if that force could push one car all the way down to the river, just imagine a force with no trees up there that's going to come down and maybe push some of those vehicles into that propane tank or into the gas pumps. We will have quite an environmental problem. And also, let's not forget what happened down in Yardley when all those waters came cascading over. That could happen between Flower Street and York Street if there's vehicles on the road and that water comes cascading over the hill. Do we want to wait for disaster? Thank you.
Anyone else in the room?
Hello, my name is April Woodall, 45 Delavan Street. I asked this question last night and I didn't get any answers. I think I missed the part where the council and mayor came to the town of Lambertville, the property owners and the residents, and said, hey, we've got this great idea. And here's why it's great for Lambertville and the community. I don't understand how this is beneficial for our community. It's definitely going to be taxing in many ways, financial and otherwise, on our current systems. Also, why this particular builder? As Ellis said last night, this builder is being sued in 17 other states, including Washington DC. I think I got that right. Why 18? Excuse me. Why would we just close in on this one and not open it up to builders of integrity that aren't being sued in 18 states plus Washington DC? Don't understand that. And if it's going to be, if the benefit is these low income, affordable income credits we have to deal with, let's build affordable housing down here with us, where they can take advantage of the ice cream place and the barbecue place and being part of the community instead of a private community up there where the residents up there are not allowed to use the streets, not allowed to use the facilities. That just doesn't make sense to me at all. And if we're concerned about the ecology of it, why can't it be a conservancy? Bucks County is filled with conservancies, conserving the land in its natural state. And if we could know who owns the land, and that seems to be, nobody seems to know that. Nobody does it. Is it owned by the state? The county? The city? How can we be developing something nobody knows who owns the actual property? I don't understand that. But if we knew who owned it, perhaps we could convince them to do something good for Lambertville, make it a conservancy, make it a place, a wild place for us to all use. I think that's all I have to say.
Anyone online, Cindy?
No one with their hand up there. We have, 4 people on our.
Okay. We have a motion to close the public comment period, please. Oh, second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So let me go through this as best as I can. Beth, at no time did I ever say NDA, non-disclosure agreement. I talked about confidential nature discussions between the city council and the contract purchasers, but I would not have used the word NDA, which implies that I have some particular personal interest in this. So I need to be very clear about that. Confidential conversations are an important part of the work that we do here, and they happen regularly, whether it's a personnel matter or a land development, land development issue. So, you know, when I refer to, closed session meetings, and I don't have a number here, but we've had, I think, close to a dozen closed session meetings on this matter over the last 2 years, referring to contractual, legal, confidential meetings that we are not allowed to disclose in the facts. So just wanted to be clear about that.
My apologies for misunderstanding.
No worries.
Yeah.
So in terms of the timeline, so the timeline here is not dictated by the state. We do have a court date set in October. It would be, I'll say it would be important for us to be ready for that court date with deliverables and things accomplished. The timeline is set. So when the council works for these past 2 years to bring forward the proposed adoption, the proposed amendments to the redevelopment plan as well as the ordinance, that means that the council has been thorough and is ready to move forward, right? As I said at the meeting, when we wouldn't have brought this forward if there was not unanimous consent that we were ready to move this forward at a council level, right? So we may not have all the details, or there may have been some things that we have to yet resolve. But the timeline starts with introducing this to the public. I mean, the timeline started 2 years ago, or actually back in 2015, if you want to be exact, when this was part of the housing settlement, this property. So this is a continuation of the timeline. From here, I don't want to call it the normal timeline, but a usual timeline would be that we introduce the ordinance and the redevelopment plan. That goes then to the next planning board meeting, the planning board views for consistency with the master plan. They have 45 days to make any recommendations to the city council. And then the city council can, at their next, whenever, sometime after that 45-day period, then can consider planning board recommendations and either work some or all or none of them into amendments to the amended plan. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk through the potential timeline for everybody now as it stands. And this is a potential, this is subject to change. So because the planning board met last night and reviewed the plan for consistency with the master plan and felt as though they needed more time to probably make some recommendation or recommendations to the city council. That meeting will be held on June 19th. Because there's only one day between the planning board meeting and council meeting, it's impractical for us to consider. It's impractical for the planning board to submit that and then for us to consider it with one day. It's not possible, actually. So what will probably have to happen is that the council will vote to carry the ordinance and the proposed amendments to the redevelopment plan to the following meeting, which would be in July. Okay, I'll say it's possible, but it's very unlikely that the council may say that it's ready to vote on that meeting, ready to vote on the 20th of June. I think that's highly unlikely, and I would not be in favor of that. So my expectation is that this will be carried to July. That will give the planning board time to get its recommendation, whatever it is, to the city council, and the city council to have time to reflect on that and to address it, possibly as individuals or with the professionals before the July meeting. And then it would be discussed at the July meeting. And from there, the timeline can be amorphous, really. I mean, the city council, if it decides to consider any amendments to be amended to what's already been introduced, that will slow the process down further because we would probably have to reintroduce everything again at the July meeting or at the August meeting, kicking it back a couple of months. So I want to be careful about the process here and say that the timeline is not set because of the planning board action last night and the potential for their action 19 and subsequent actions by the governing body considering that information. So all of that is subject to, process and what happens. There is not a hard deadline. I will have to speak to the court and fair share and let them know that, our original timeline that we were shooting for is now unrealistic based on circumstances that have changed during the process. And that, I don't know how that's I don't know what will happen in that meeting or during that update. The court may say that they want to push the October hearing date back, or they may have some other direction for me and or the city. So I hope that explains the timeline. Council all good with that? Does that make sense to everybody?
Thank you.
Sure. So Sean, the Clausen property. I'm not going to remember all the details here, so I'm not going to talk about this too much, but we can clarify. There was an overlay that was put on the Clausen property, and Cindy, if you have anything here that you want to add, if you feel comfortable adding, you may. There was an overlay for affordable housing put on the Clausen property. If I remember correctly, that overlay was lifted as a result of public opposition to the overlay. Is that fair?
In November of 2018, from my memory, that was never adopted.
It was never adopted. Okay, so
It didn't make it.
so
Right, that was, excuse me, that was my understanding, was that the overlay was put on and it was never adopted, never enacted. But it was removed in February or March of 2020.
What was removed was the condemnation on the Academy Hill property.
that's right.
That's what was removed.
So I'd rather get back to you
Right.
with the particulars of the overlay and what happened. Meant to pull that up this morning, but it's been a hectic day, so I can't answer that question effectively. I can say that, based on previous subsequent activity at the Clausen property, the property was purchased, as everyone knows, the council has consistently moved forward with the idea of funding open space through grants, through Green Acres and the county. So we are toward the tail end of that process. We have an exception area, and again, I'd have to pull up the map to say exactly what that is. So, you know, when I said last night, what I should have said last night was that I have considered questioning affordable housing on that property. Given the current exclusion, the exclusionary zone, it's really a very small area, and it'd be very difficult to put any units there based on the current, the current configuration of property. So, you know, really the only area that exists are the barns, the log cabin, and the farm market that is not going to be deeded open space. So that process is already nearing complete. So, you know, it's very unrealistic to consider any affordable housing on the fossil property at this time. So I should make clear about that. It's one of the dangers of speaking kind of extemporaneously. I did consider it. I did have conversations about it with a few people. But I think in the end, it was not going to be a practical or greatly beneficial in terms of the amount of units it might yield. Landfill, we do not own the property. So we're not responsible for the property. I don't know when the property changed hands or how the landfill, you know, was the land. I mean, maybe Cindy knows. Again,
Public record of the sale from the city.
I don't have that here tonight, Sean. I mean, if you
You
want.
haven't looked into it.
Well over 20 years ago.
Long time ago.
Yeah. Okay, but 20 years is not.
Correct. So we're not gonna have this back and forth conversation, please. We can get the information. If you want to email me that question, we will find out, right? That's a very straightforward question to answer. We just don't have it handy tonight. And again, the laws around landfills, I'm not even gonna touch that one. I'm not an attorney. I have no background in any of this stuff. So, you know, if there are specific questions about that, you know, you can write them out. We'll do our best to answer them through the proper channels.
But was my assumption correct that it will be, the intention is to sell to Nanny and it's not, or is the owner planning on
I have no idea.
retaining that? Oh, you don't have any idea?
Well, it's part of the landfill area is part of phase 2. That's all I know at this time, right? It's included in the redevelopment plan as a potential phase 2. So that's all I can say about it.
So I think the question is, a question I heard from earlier is, I know we're jumping out of sequences, who owns this property and how did Hovnanian get involved?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to do this systematically. So in terms of Jeff's questions, certainly questions as they pertain to the scope of what the planning board is responsible for in this matter, those can be directed to Paul Cool. And we'll get those answers. Many right questions. I would prefer them insofar as they pertain to the planning board's mission of working to identify whether this is in line with the master plan. That would be appreciated. If not, we can get those questions answered through the professionals. I will note that I did send an invitation to several people on Conant Hill today. I extended the invitation to all members who live on Conant Hill who are residents of Lambertville. I will host a meeting, a conversation here with myself at some point later this month to address questions or concerns and have a conversation. So, no, we're done with public comment for now. Tree ordinance, we just reconsidered the tree ordinance last year. We amended it. It was a very long and complex process. I don't foresee any changes or amendments proposed to the tree ordinance at this time. It took us the better part of 6 months with a lot of incredible work from Helen Pettit and other volunteers. There were multiple meetings about that, about amending the tree ordinance. It's a very comprehensive tree ordinance, and I think it's pretty good the way it is. In regards to Judy's reflections, I would welcome Councilwoman Kaminsky to share her recommendations with the council that she spoke about at the last meeting.
Haven't, I had shared them through, to Cindy, who, they were in the whole document.
Incorporated them into the minutes, which I don't think you've seen yet.
Okay.
It's my recollection.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I have not seen those, so good to know. Thank you. As for the agenda, I set the agenda. I do the best I can to make sure that, things that are on the agenda are things that we can focus on, that we can work through, that are manageable. The council works with the agenda that I set, based on, many factors. This meeting, this work session is, one of the items that we're going to be talking about is a stormwater control ordinance. Hopefully, we'll be able to get to some consensus at the council level, because I'd really like to move this along. We have met as a subcommittee several times. We have this, city engineer here who's going to, discuss the ordinance with us. So we are working toward that. The meeting on the 21st, we will have the results, the final report of the stormwater utility feasibility study. It's important for me to make sure that all of those results are shared, with the public, and the council before we continue to move forward on any other stormwater matters.
June 20th.
June 20th, thank you for correcting. On June 20th, and so I want to share all of that with the public. And as I said in previous meetings, we are doing a lot for stormwater all the time. It's something that we're constantly working on. Carol, thank you for your comments, and April, I would just say the property is owned by Merrick Wilson and has been owned by Merrick Wilson for many years. We verified that last night. I wanted to be sure, so we actually spent a couple of minutes looking it up. Sometimes the wording on these ownerships could be an LLC. It could actually, it could not always completely clear from the tax records in my mind. But we did look at this last night, and Merrick Wilson or Academy Hill.
Throughout the 20-some years that he's owned it, he's had several different corporations. He is the main owner, but he's had Riverview, River Valley, he's had Academy Hill, he had something like Twin Towers or something, Twin Oaks or something at one point. So there's been various different corporations that he has started and have owned various different portions of this property, but he was the owner of all.
But the bottom line is the transition of this property is a private sale from the current owner to K Hovnanian. So the city has no role in that transfer and a quote selection of a developer, because it's the developer has chosen to purchase it privately.
And that's an important point that the councilwoman makes. We didn't choose K Hovnanian. They had a contract with Merrick Wilson on the property. So when they came to us, there was already some contractual relationship there. And so, we began to have conversations with them as the contract purchaser, based on, the existing housing plan, which really requires us to develop that site. Not really, it does require us to develop that site. So that would answer why this building. A couple of other thoughts. Even though the roads are private up there, they are open to the public. Well, I'm sorry that somebody told you something that's not true, but that is true. So, for example, the roads at
Woodcrest,
not Woodcrest,
Lambertville.
no,
Yes, again.
Forest Street,
Rock Creek,
Rock
Rock-
Creek Woods. The roads at Rock Creek Woods are private, but that doesn't stop me and my dog from walking through the neighborhood once a week just to see how things are, right? So there's not going to be any restriction to the public on this property. There's no gatehouse. People are going to be free to move around it. The only thing that it means is it's a private association, and that they will be responsible for paving the roads and maintaining the roads. So that's what it means. It doesn't mean that people cannot walk there or cannot go there. And the last question is, why couldn't we put affordable housing somewhere else? Why couldn't we fit 40 units somewhere else? I'm just going to leave you with the question, where else, right? You walk from one end of South Union Street to the far end of North Union Street, and you see how densely built the flat is, right? There's almost I cannot conceive of a way that we would be able to get 40 affordable housing units or 32 or whatever the minimum is for our third round obligation anywhere down here. It's not going to happen. People can talk about it, but that level of affordable housing units are not going to happen down here. We have an overlay here, We have requirements for accessory dwelling units, so there are mechanisms in place to create affordable housing down here. So we did have one unit this year when somebody wanted to take their garage and turn it into an apartment. The first 10 years of that apartment, it has to be deeded as affordable housing. So there are mechanisms to create affordable housing across the city, but in terms of 40 units, this is the place. So no, we're not going to do any more questions. This is not how we do it. So that will answer, I think, all the questions that we had from the public comment session. And we're going to move on now. So we're going to change the agenda a little bit here. We're going to do the consent agenda, and then we're going to move to a discussion of the stormwater the stormwater control ordinance, just because I don't want to keep Doug here unnecessarily for the whole meeting. We can get him out and save an hour's worth of his time on the city dime. I think that's a good idea. So we will move forward with
We'll have to talk relatively quickly. That's right.
It's like by birdie.
So
Ballet.
we'll move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda, the following resolutions on the consent agenda are considered routine and shall be enacted by one motion. Should any member of the city council seek separate discussion of any item, that item shall be discussed separately. I just want to highlight two things here before offer the council the opportunity to pull something out or to make a motion. We do have a resolution to extend the 3-month extension of the valet parking service under the mean that would be through August 30th. Right, we are still working on the ordinance for a valet parking program here. And part of my reason for holding off on that was really want to see how this program works in a busy period of time. Right, so it's now been operational for 6 months. It's done very well. I think it hasn't really caused any trouble that I can see. The reports have come in, it's been consistent. But I wanted to sort of just give it one more shot before we potentially memorialize the ordinance dealing with valet parking. And then the other one I just want to highlight is resolution number 93, 2024. It's a resolution to authorize the supplier agreement with IDT Energy for the Hunterdon Area Energy Cooperative. So Cindy, you're also much better at explaining this than I am. Would you just explain kind of what this does? It's an auction for basically lower electric rates.
Yes, and it's for the community aggregation of electric. And so we joined the Hunterdon County Cooperative. A couple of years ago, we had our own cooperative, and then with West Amwell Township, but then we had the opportunity to join the other 26 municipalities in the county of Hunterdon. I think they since then have even expanded to some in Warren County. But they go out and they do the bidding and they get the best price. They've been trying to do this for the past 2 years, have not been successful in getting a price that was lower than JCP&L rates. But this last bid, they got really good rates. So this resolution authorizes the mayor to execute the agreement.
Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
All right, council. There are no questions. May I have a motion to approve the resolution listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Aye. Any other questions? All right, we're going to move to consideration of the stormwater control ordinance here in the city. And I want to give a shout out to Councilwoman Kaminsky and Paul Cool, who's here this evening, and also Jeff Fiddle, who are working on a subcommittee to kind of look at this, also for Doug's expertise. The stormwater control ordinance that we received from the boilerplate from the state arrived, and we introduced it. I don't remember the date, a couple of months ago. We've now carried it, I think, a couple of council meetings. We want to get this right for Lambertville, and so we spent some time working with Doug. I'm just going to give a brief rundown, and Doug, if I get anything wrong, Doug will correct me. But what we took a look at, I'm just going to ask everybody to give me a second here to look this up on me. So the ordinance amends the zoning ordinance, the stormwater management specific to the provisions for stormwater control of the city of Lambertville. And one of the key features of this is to make a determination about the trigger for stormwater control in terms of square footage of impervious surface. And so we've looked at that for major development, and we've had some good conversations about that. The conversation tonight, one will be to make sure that everybody on the council is comfortable with that number. And then secondly, something that we've looked at, which is not in the state model ordinance, is the idea of minor development and how and to what extent that might be regulated by the ordinance. So in doing so, Doug has pulled out a couple of things that we've looked at. And I just want to highlight those things. So in terms of discharge requirements for smaller projects, there are a number of different approaches that we could take here. Princeton, for example, has a section in their ordinance, which has general requirements for smaller projects. And these requirements are based on, for each square footage of impervious surface, you've got to manage 2 gallons of stormwaters. And how do you do that? So you do it with grass swales, or green roofs, or pervious paving.
Vivian, could you talk into
Oh, yeah.
thank you.
Vegetative film strips, cisterns, dry wells, etc. So they have a very comprehensive, detailed approach to managing stormwater, even at a small scale. And that suits them well because they have an enormous amount of people who are there to see that level of requirement and enforcement. And these things travel with the land. So these are needed requirements. So if you're required to put in a rain garden because you made a small deck off of your kitchen, that rain garden is a requirement in perpetuity that travels with the land. So that's one possible approach. Another thing that which one or two municipalities do was to for minor developments do kind of fee in lieu of, right? Where you base where you dedicate some fee which is based on the square footage of the project to an overall stormwater management program. It could be for infrastructure or maintenance for management, that kind of thing. So that was the second option, or you could leave it out altogether, as many municipalities do. And I just want to note we have Michael Pissarro here, who's the policy director from the Watershed Institute, who's an expert at this kind of stuff. And Michael called me this afternoon and said, I'm going to show up for meetings tonight. I'm like, that's great. We're talking about stormwater. So I'm going to give a little latitude. So if you have anything that you want to add kind of in this discussion, I would encourage you to step up to the podium and share your thoughts. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Doug. Doug, did I do a fair job of sort of describing what we're looking at tonight?
Yes, so I guess to extend off what you were saying, the way this all started was that the model ordinance from DEP, which was issued, I believe actually in 2023, is when they came out with the model ordinance. And so it was started with that model ordinance. I compared that to the current ordinance that the city has to see what changes actually affect the city. There were a number of items that do not exist in the model ordinance that the city does have in place. One of them, example, is reconstruction. Areas of reconstruction that, for whatever reason, reconstruction was actually taken out of the state's model ordinance. So I had actually placed it back in at the recommendation of the committee. That was reinstated or placed back into the current ordinance that you have in front of you. And there were some other items such as a mitigation plan. I don't know if you have the model ordinance in the city already have mitigation plan requirements. So that was also placed back into the current draft ordinance. And so that was kind of first how I looked at it and compared, and that was brought to the committee. The committee discussed. I believe they were in agreement with the majority of those recommendations and it's two. So we didn't reduce anything. which you can't anyway, nothing was reduced from the model ordinance, if anything, we just added to it. And then the conversation continued into, what can we do, what can we add to the ordinance in order to require stricter stormwater policies, for the city? And so with those conversations, that's when we moved into, as the mayor has stated, right now, the model ordinance just talks about major development. However, there are municipalities throughout the state that do have included minor development. So major development is, we'll say, I'll say what I, from what I found, the average start of major development is 4,000 square feet. Or 5,000 square feet, I apologize, 5,000 square feet. I know that the committee conversation, we have talked about lowering. Currently, we have 4,000 square feet within the ordinance. Then the minor development would start at a much lesser number, which when I did a little research, it seemed like a good starting number that many municipalities use is 400 square feet. So a minor development would be any impervious that is added from 400 square feet up to the 4,000 square feet. And then anything from 4,000 a major development. The next conversation and consideration is then how we handle minor developments. And so, as the mayor has stated, in Princeton, they actually have a small projects requirement. And now which is a great section of their ordinance. It actually even breaks down and specifies exactly what types of what they call stormwater pest management practices that can be installed, such as a grass swale, a green roof, pervious paving. And so the issue though that arises is then there has to be enforcement of those features, because once those features are installed, as the mayor stated, they run in perpetuity with the land. So once it's done, then one becoming property, the next owner is maintaining it. And unless the municipality is going to regulate these or not regulate, but always monitor them to make sure that they're functioning correctly, then there's nothing to stop a second property owner from removing a rain garden because they still want to garden in that section of their property. Now, one of the ways that DEP is trying to handle this is they're requiring any property owner that has BMPs, again, best management practices, on their property, that they do have to do a semi-annual inspection and provide those inspection reports to the city. So that way the city can help track the inspection are taking place. Now, again, along with the issues with that is somebody can just fill out a form and just hand it into the city. It doesn't mean they're physically doing the inspection. So again, it requires pretty much additional manpower. In some municipalities, there is one individual that's their full-time job is monitoring and to ensure that these stormwater BMPs are being maintained properly. So that's unfortunately on the downside, especially when you go as low as we're looking, then that's going to be a lot more BMPs throughout the entire city that would have to be managed. So the other consideration that was taken into account was whether to have anyone who would fall, any project that would fall within the requirement of minor development, to have them pay a fee in lieu of. That fee would go into a designated fund that would be used strictly for stormwater management within the city. There need to be upgrades to existing facilities. If there needs to be maybe a new regional system to be installed, that's what that fund would be used for. Now, we did question several large attorneys for the state, and they've all agreed that this is something that can legally be done. Because right now, there's no municipalities that I am aware of in New Jersey that actually has something like this in effect. Although some of the attorneys I talk to think it's a great idea and have actually now started looking at it for some of their municipalities. But in Pennsylvania, there are several municipalities that do already have this in place. So the other issue, and so if we went into having it as a fee in lieu of, then the determination is, how do you calculate that fee? Do you base it on square footage, which is how the municipalities I'm aware of, Pennsylvania, it's $1.50 a square foot of new impervious that is installed. Other locations, they calculate it a little bit differently, so I believe it's basically a flat fee, like if you're 0 to 500 square feet, it's X amount, if you're 500 to 1,000, it's X amount. So that's another item that would need to be discussed on how, if that's the approach, then council's going to take, we would just have to make a determination how to calculate, that fee. And so I think that brings us up to speed.
Doug, I'd like to ask you a question, and then I'd like to give Michael an opportunity if he knows anything that he wants to share about, there, and you don't have to, obviously, but we welcome it. So under a model like the Princeton model, so we talk about, all of the various things that a property owner would have to do and provide in perpetuity. That would also generate review professionals and escrow fees and that as well, right? So is it fair to say that if you include minor development in the ordinance, property owner is going to be responsible for paying some amount either through the escrow fees or through payment in lieu of? Is that fair to say?
Yes, for example, fees or what?
Escrow fees for review, right?
Or payment in lieu.
Or payment in lieu.
I just didn't use it.
Yeah. And so thank you for answering that. Michael, do you have anything to add?
Sure.
Welcome. Sorry to put you on the spot. You're,
I'll rarely say no.
we got 3 minutes.
All right, took my coffee. Thank you very much. My name is Mike Massar. I'm the policy director for the Watershed Institute. What you've been saying is really great, and a couple things. We've worked with municipalities over the last 4 or 5 years on enhanced stormwater management. We have our own ordinance, and reconstruction and redevelopment is very important. So as older areas start to redevelop, and I'm hoping your definition of reconstruction really covers that. I think it might, but I'm not 100% sure. But with the minor development, I think it's really important to have a minor development requirement with relief valves, because there are going to be areas where it doesn't make sense. It is not economical, but having property owners contribute to the solution as they are contributing to the additional volume is important. And when we designed our ordinance, we said 2 gallons per square foot with a trigger of 250. Our theory was it would be easy for an architect or a landscape architect to design the bioretention as part of the landscape for this addition or this small home. So it wasn't that much of an increased burden, but I do think having a waiver fee, so when it doesn't make sense, or you don't have the area to do it, so that the town can take that money and build projects or maintenance systems, really makes sense. The other big thing, I think, and this is coming, so might as well get ahead of it, is an on-site retention standard. There was discussion earlier about massive development uphill. Our current rules don't deal with quantity, even though we talk about it as quantity, quality, and recharge. We don't really deal with quantity, we deal with rate. So having an on-site retention standard where some amount of water is kept through infiltration, reuse, evapotranspiration, it really starts to get at that volume issue that our rules really ignore. And that is coming. There's a new set of rules going to be proposed very, very soon. That will have an on-site retention center. So I think that is super important to get now, especially if you're going to have some development coming. And there may be ways to do it. So, you have a different standard depending on your topography as well. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but those are some very, very quick top level thoughts.
Great.
Yes.
So, just switching a little from minor development, I've asked, which I think is a good thing, but then going back to, the major development, and when we were talking about regulations that are coming, I'm kind of interested now in, which I hadn't thought about before, but in terms of what we can do for a little bit more. Like, we're happy, everybody's happy with the DEP standard, but we know, as you were talking about, things are gonna change, get more stringent. Can we do something a little bit more? I mean, my feeling always is that when you're in a constrained community here, and, you know, we're talking about stormwater, the one thing you really want to be careful of is in the development that you have left, that you do all that you can, and maybe all that you can plus. So as a community here, we're going to focus on resiliency and, you know, be wanting to do all these things. What can we do that's a little bit beyond DEP, that's with the law, that we can put in our ordinance? Should we use different rainwater calculations? You were talking about the on-site retention volume.
Yeah, so great question. And the on-site retention requirement we have for both minor and major development, so we would apply it to both. And I think if I understood correctly, your major development threshold is 4,000 square feet of impervious. Both that is phenomenal. You know, Princeton is 5,000, so 4,000 is great. Having on-site retention standard is very important. Taking into consideration where your water is going, so as you collect it and discharge it, is it going to a waterway that is already impaired? We live in New Jersey, so the answer is yes. You're under an obligation under your MS4 permit to improve water quality through a watershed improvement plan. Why not take the opportunity as new development comes in to make sure you're not making the problem worse? Take the opportunity to make it better development by development. So including enhanced standards when you're discharging into an impaired water or water that has a TDL.
Also have C1.
Or category 1. You know, the current model rules don't require water quality treatment for non-motor vehicle travel services. I think that is a mistake, because our patios, our roofs, our sidewalks all contribute to a pollution problem. So if you route that through a separate system, you're getting water quality treatment, and you're getting, you know, unintentionally or as a byproduct, some volume reductions because you're getting it treated. I think those are opportunities. The redevelopment standard, the on-site retention standard, I think are probably some of the biggest bangs for your buck. For these, you know, major or minor. But yeah.
With that same thinking, you know, we've had a lot of people come to the planning board meeting and they're concerned about water up on the hill with an old landfill. So what type of stuff can we do to build up to address some of those concerns through the ordinance? I don't know if there's anything you.
So, I mean, one of the other things in our enhanced ordinance is taking a look at the existing topography of a site and not changing it. You also want to make sure you're not requiring this analysis from the developer. So where's the water going now? In a lot of development sites you see, they completely reconfigure the hydrology of that site. You don't necessarily want to do that. But now you're drying up wetlands, you're flooding a wetland, or you're, you know, impacting a stream or the groundwater. So trying to maintain that hydrology. The cut and fill ordinance, how much grading can I do on the site? The couple towns that had it, Montgomery just, I think, adopted one. Reddington, I think, has one as well. Really controlling. There's a development site I'm working in Phillipsburg where they're bringing in 15 feet of fill to flatten out so you can have a parking lot right next to wetlands and stream, but they're staying out of it. What are you going to do? But those are things, you know, reducing the major threshold, you know, on-site retention. You know, we have half of the 2-year storm, what I understand DEP is coming out with, you know, I've read, so I haven't fully digested what it means, but an inch and a quarter, 2 hours on-site retention, and, you know, reuse. So there may not be opportunities to actually infiltrate it, but cisterns. I would invite everyone to come to the Watershed Center. We have a lot of the green practices, and we have cisterns where we collect some of the stormwater and reuse, you know, flushing our toilets. Kind of silly, but we do it. Because it keeps some of that water out of going downstream.
Thank you. Yeah, very informative.
Well, good question. How do you deal with trespass? Water that trespasses from one property to another?
That, you know,
Not an enemy.
it is, and, you know,
That's what
and
they call it.
I'm an attorney, and I was in private practice, so I had a couple people come to me looking to hire me to deal with that. I never got to work on a case, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I think, and there was a case in, Haddonfield, where the township got sued because mismanagement.
I grew up in Hatfield, so yes, you're exactly right.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we,
Flooding issue.
we gotta get running on, and, you know, in a place that has very little developable land left. Making sure we keep as much water on site, so it doesn't leave. You know, it doesn't change what has normally come off the site normally is important. And so requiring, one of the other changes in our ordinance is, you know, you have the quantity. And there's like 4 different ways to tackle quantity. In our enhanced ordinance, I wrote, I don't care which way you do it, and everyone does it the same way, and there's gonna reduce the peak rates. But you gotta make sure you're not having a negative impact downstream or upstream from a volume, you know, issue.
How do you do that to?
You're gonna be here all night.
Great information.
No, no,
Yeah,
I never hear you, so.
I know we're writing an order, so I want to make sure every tool at our disposal could be used, but how do you address it if it's an existing? If it's happening, if something's been happening for years, how do you then educate or require, just as you said, to keep as much property on the land that produces it?
So if the site is already flooding its neighbors.
Yes.
I mean, you have some limitations. One, you know, we have and other watershed organizations run a river friendly program. You know, teaching and educating residents on how to be better stewards of their land. So that can help. As I mentioned, the town has its obligation to do a watershed improvement plan. So those may be areas where you may want to target in your development of your plan, some improvements. When that site comes up for redevelopment or a new development, that's when, you know, these on-site retentions, the enhanced water quality treatments come into play. If it doesn't change hands and the property owner's not doing much, there's a little less. I mean, if you have a stormwater utility, there are ways to provide grants through the funding of that stormwater utility, so that property owner could install stormwater management or practices to reduce maybe a native plants and meadow ordinance in the town, so you're not requiring, you know, a lot of towns, and I don't know whether Lambert Bill does or not. We have required lawns to be cut and clean. Well, maybe we should encourage our residents to get rid of some of the lawns. Lawns are not really good from an infiltration perspective. They allow more to run off than they don't. So encouraging residents to remove.
Grass is not the most absorbent species out there, and it might as well be asphalt in some cases.
Yeah. And there may be things I'm not thinking of, and so I will continue to think of on that one. You know, the areas where the township has a lot of authority and power is when someone wants to do something. You know, the variance, the site plan, if you have any ordinances in place now before those applications come in. Designate areas in need of redevelopment and have a redevelopment agreement. Those are another opportunities where you can get more protections and more treatment. So those are some opportunities.
Are there opportunities to, I guess, suggest or recommend practices to property owners to independently adopt these practices on their property, like you said, getting rid of lawn, right? And I'm thinking, people, you know, if people get some sort of incentive, I don't know what that is, but you know, some sort of incentive to voluntarily adopt these practices, right? how does that work?
I'm not as familiar, I mean, the one area where I can think of incentive is through a stormwater utility. So the way the legislation is currently structured, if you have stormwater management on your site, you get a credit. And I also believe, that, if a utility exists, they can provide grants to property owners to do things. We have in the past run rain barrel workshops on how to build them at a, reasonable price. We have trained landscapers to build bioretention. I know a lot of people in Princeton have built them independent of actual having a minor development. So providing that education. So, we all have flower beds, we all have landscaping in our yards. That landscaping, most of the time, is decorative, not necessarily functional. Changing that thought process, and, we as an, I haven't spent any time talking about the Watershed Institute, but we do a lot of education. We do a lot of meeting with the public. We do webinars. We run an all-day conference. We do, we come to the EC meetings. We're more than willing to come and continue to provide education, discussion. We work very closely with Princeton, Sustainable Princeton, in developing their ordinance. They came out with templates for some of their stormwater practices, so it's a little more plug and play, so you didn't have to spend as much time reviewing them or designing them. Sorry.
So, yeah, and thanks. We actually have some school programs that I think have just finished this spring with you. So, it's been a great relationship. And our environmental missions had a couple of rain barrel programs, and we just dug out all the grass on the west side of City Hall and planted native species. So, we're trying to encourage people to do that, and incentivizing people to take out grasses. It's hard work.
Yeah, I mean, it's an urgent problem, but we didn't get here overnight. It took us decades, if not a century or two, to get us here. We're not gonna reverse course overnight, but we do need to be as aggressive as possible.
Thanks. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. And, if anyone wants to talk, myself and my team are more than welcome to have those conversations. So thank you.
And if you're interested, we're having the final report of our stormwater utility feasibility study presented to the council on June 20th.
I would do it on the night of our summer solstice trail run.
Maybe we should go there.
We have Zoom access.
I'm sorry.
You can attend via Zoom.
Trail run in Zoom.
Thank you. So, what does council think in terms of this ordinance? I think is everybody comfortable with the 4,000 square foot major developed number that we've talked about?
I'd like to pursue some of the things that we just talked about in terms of strengthening the major development, given where, that we have those, things coming, blooming, that in terms of, as Mike said, getting it right, is really more important than, pushing the ball forward, like going. So I think some of these things that you talked about are things that are essential to us.
Okay. So we're gonna table this
Take
discussion
another-
and
yeah.
reconvene as a subcommittee. And take this into further consideration.
Yeah, we can take a look at some of the things that have been done, so we have a little bit of a menu for choice. And, because we're not experts on this, so we always appreciate, Doug's expertise, and he can give us a flavor of some things that we can do, so then we know the choices.
And I think with the, obviously, the new regulations coming out, I think now's the time to really beat this up and get it right, so I have to continue to address it, so I really appreciate it.
Right, yeah, we wanna do, go above and beyond for everybody and not just take a model ordinance
I have.
and say, here,
Yeah, I got that.
so, yeah. Thank you.
What about, don't give us the cards with the wrong element.
For twice, 3 times.
If I can dovetail into Karen's comment, is that I think it's also important that we address the minor one as well. And, you know, I haven't been.
There's so many.
Your book? I haven't, in lieu of, I think if we further identify the amount of lot size. Because some people won't be able to do something on their property because they won't have the space, so. To do it, but, you know, I keep on remembering that there was a development that was going on up the hill. And it was a minor subdivision. And it didn't have the amount at that point of the disturbance. And luckily, because of pressure from the neighbors, he agreed to do a stormwater management plan, which he did not have to do. So I think people are responsible, should be responsible for, not for impervious, plans that they do on their properties, whether it's a swimming pool, whether it's something that is, you know, a deck. I think people should be responsible and very mindful that they're creating impervious surface, which then the city has, the neighbors and the city have to deal with it. And you have that in your draft, you added that in. But it be in lieu of, I mean, when we do building in town, if someone doesn't want to build fair share housing, then they can pay a fee, and that goes into an account that, in my knowledge, just sits there. Or has just sat in an account, rather than have the real requirement to provide fair share housing in the projects in which they are working. So I shine away from in lieu of, in just a blanket in lieu of.
Okay. Well, if start with you, we'll reconvene as a subcommittee and get back to work. All right, thank you for the discussion, and thank you so much for your questions.
Well, I just,
Nice conversation.
thank you.
Yeah, right, sure. There's so many turtles crossing 29, we're all stopping to move the turtle. And I know how to do it now, you know, it's like.
And I go back to remembering the conversation I had at a block party up on the hill, where we were originally talking about this several years ago as well. And I just spoke to the homeowner, I mean, in the neighborhood. And I said, you know, there are plans to come out with doing something to minimize the amount of runoff. They go, just let us know what it is, we'd love to do. So there's a hunger to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, so. Good luck to that.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna move on, back to the agenda or, sequence. So, at this point, we're gonna, we have one ordinance for first reading tonight. This would be ordinance number, 12-2024. For extension of the lease agreement between the city of Lambertville and Fisherman's Wharf for the use of a portion of the property owned by the city and located at 260 North Community Street, lot 1002, lot 41. So this will permit Fisherman's Wharf to continue to lease the farm market. Thank you, Doug. I'm glad you had the good sense to just get up and go. I would have forgotten until the end of the meeting, and we haven't stayed for the whole time. Thank you. This would extend the lease of the farm market until a decision is made on how the governing body wants to proceed with the sale. I've spoken publicly now. We are in negotiations with Fisherman's Wharf for consideration of purchase of the farm market. And while those conversations continue, obviously we don't want to, you know, Fisherman's Wharf. I would like to keep them in space at their current rent until such time as, if any, that we enter an agreement to sell the building to them. So unless there are any comments from the council on this, I would ask permission to introduce ordinance number 11-2024. What's that?
12, I'm in its second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ordinance 12-2024 on first reading, with a public hearing scheduled for June 2024.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a motion on.
So, yes, I can't ask the
I
question.
don't know. I think you can.
It should be
didn't second-
seconded
I didn't
first.
second.
Okay, I'm
Now
sorry.
you.
Now I'm good.
Yeah.
So, is it been second? Yes.
Yeah.
So, the city has renewed this lease 6 months at a clip for multiple times. Since they've been in this space at $1,000 a month since 2021. And the reasoning was that it was a time of emergency, everybody was in crisis, and the city was very benevolent about that. Has there been any discussion, as we continue through this, we had talked about this, I think, the last time we renewed the lease, about changing the amount of the monthly rent to be more in line with market rate?
I've had no discussion, Fisherman's Mark, on that.
I don't know what other council members think about that. If at all.
Well, we have time between now and the public hearing to think about it. I would.
Well, it's very kind of us to do this. But I think at some point, we need to treat this like a business, more on a business relationship level.
I respect that. I just think in terms of the timing and the hopeful, ultimate sale of this, and I think I also have to recognize what Fisherman's Mark does in the community, and they really do fill a lot of needs that the city is unable to pay to do. So, I understand what you're saying. I'm okay with it, and I also am okay with it because hopefully it's not gonna be a long-term thing, because hopefully we're gonna be selling it pretty soon.
It's been 3 years.
Okay,
That's all I'm saying.
and you bring up a good point. I do, but I think you have to balance what they do offer to the community and the fact that we don't have the funds to do that. So, it's a little bit of a symbiotic relationship where they're getting nice property at I don't know what we're breaking people at. I really don't. But hopefully,
I mean, members of the public have brought it up, and I think, we should let them know that we're thinking about it or not thinking about it. That's all.
Any other council want to weigh in on this?
What do you want to do just for 3 months?
I would,
Without Bill being here,
yeah, I wouldn't advise that.
I'm not sure we can. I
Okay,
think that's why we can only do 6 months at a clip.
okay. Well, if we can't, then it becomes public information and the public understands that.
well, I got an idea for you. How about when they negotiate, we're just gonna make it pay a little bit more to cover it, so.
I'm good with that. We can figure out what the retroactive aggregate market rate rent.
That's the,
I would support.
that's the.
Yeah, you guys 20%.
That's the spirit.
There we go too. Yeah, plus, what do you call it? Interest accrued, whatever.
I'll go on record as saying I share.
It's called the facilities charge fee, like you go into a
I'll
hotel.
go on record as saying I share Councilman Knight's approach to this. I think that on the whole, the basis that the amount of good that's done by Fisherman's Mark in the community is well worth the $1,000 a month. I'm comfortable with this. So unless anybody else has a voice to share or a view to share, I think we will move to a vote.
And I would just say one other thing. Hopefully, we're gonna move forward to the sale. I would just ask that, we do get to that 6-month end of the term, that perhaps we do have a discussion about the price, so.
Absolutely. I will reconsider my position in 6 months. This,
Yeah, I would hope so. So the line's been drawn in the sand. I mean,
isn't necessary, Council President.
I am entitled to speak my mind and my opinions and concerns. We're equal here on this dais.
We are.
So I don't need to be scolded about what is inappropriate and what isn't appropriate when I speak respectfully.
You made a personal remark, so let's move on, please. I'm gonna ask for a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Kaminsky,
Yeah.
Councilman Lai,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
With the provision that we revisit this in 6 months.
Does that count as a yes, Cindy?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not worth the papers right now. Yes.
I said it.
Mayor Nelson.
Yeah.
Do it.
Thank you. Right, moving on to other discussion items. I'm gonna go out of order here as well. I want to talk a little bit about the cannabis ordinance and the potential revision, or amendment to the cannabis ordinance. So one of the things that's become apparent, as a result of the way the ordinance was implemented is that the ordinance requires that that we have two cannabis businesses in the central business district, and one in the C3 and one in the C2 districts. And what happened was when the dust settled and we've got the businesses in place, what we found is that it's not really feasible for a second micro business to go into the C2 district because of a couple of factors. One, a dearth of available space, and two, kind of bumping up against proximity in terms of other businesses. So what I would like the council to consider is amending the cannabis ordinance, and this is just discussion tonight, to include the C3 district south of Bridge Street, which we don't have a zoning map with us, but that would be the commercial district that includes all of the Laceworks building all the way up to I'm forgetting the building's name. All the way up to
Oddly shaped the way the C3 goes.
what's the brick building just south of Phoenix?
Riverwalk.
Riverwalk, yes. So from Riverwalk down, that is the C3 district.
But it's a free district in the northern portion of the town, so I think we would really wouldn't be talking about 2 and 1 C3, we would be, because there's 2 separate sections where Union Chill is, just so, is one portion of the C3, and then this portion is the other portion of the C3.
Well,
So the idea was not to have too many, just to clarify, so we almost have to call the C3 North and C3 South rather than.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you missed that. I identified it. So it would be the C3 South Bridge Street, right? So that we wouldn't have 2 of the C3 district.
The consideration being that someone could go into the Riverwalk, which has its own parking lot and is secluded. To be able to utilize that rather than the C2 district, which is right smack in the middle of town. It includes like Valparaiso.
The gas station.
And the gas station, and, South, we don't want South. I'm out of there,
I was working with Ward on this, or going through the steps on this, and I think it was our intent. So when we said south was the south end of town, and somehow that may have gotten lost in translation, and I never really picked it up until recently that it is in C2 and not in C3. So I think it's due to the proximity of the C2 and the CBD, it just makes much more sense to separate them more than cluster them. The idea was that we didn't want to cluster them, and unfortunately, that's how it came out. So I would be in favor of C3 south of Bridge Street. So that'll be the delineation north and south. So to not confuse anybody.
Is that
More than
comfortable
I
with
am.
that? And I would note that there is one remaining license available in the city, and that would be a micro business.
And so we're eliminating C2 out of the mix.
I don't know that we would do that. I think you could leave it in. I would defer to Bill Opal on that. It's possible that one of the cannabis businesses may close at some point, and then you would have a space available in the C2. Maybe, for, I don't know, if Union Chill, for example, closed, the C2 might be a viable location.
About that, because I don't know, I'd like to go look, then we should really go look and for sure know where the C2 boundaries are and what we're talking about rather than just call it from up here. Because it's really the land use in the city, the future, is that what we want on the way in, coming in on Route 29, which I think is, I wasn't here when we passed this ordinance, but it could become a thought. The one appealing thing about C3 South is that it is and off the road location, it's got a lot of parking, and it's discreet. And it's, yeah, and there isn't, yeah, a neighborhood, which is really important. You get into something a lot different, you know, in the C2 location, so,
I'd be fine with removing the C2 location from the
you know.
ordinance.
We just for when we, you know, well, let it know where the bound, you know, and really
Yeah, well, we,
have it a little nailed,
Yeah.
that's all.
yeah, I
think accurate.
I think the intent, once again, the intent was to have the third one in the south end of town, and
Yeah.
this will guarantee it.
Okay, good. I think we're agreed. I will ask Bill to draft an amendment that we will introduce at the June 20th meeting.
One quick question, just because you mentioned about, there's one other available license. I know there's one license with, factory, like, how long are they able to keep that without doing it? Do we need to,
Don't quote me on this. They did get an extension from the planning board for a year. And it's my understanding that they have started what's that?
They'll be ready in November.
Okay, yeah, they have started work. They do have permits for, I don't know if they've started construction work, but they have demolition permits, I believe. So they are in process.
The goal is November, and they've renewed their license with the city, which they have to do before they can renew their license with the state. So
it's tax revenue checks, so.
All right, good, thank you for that. The two other things I wanted to just touch base with, and we're not really gonna make any decisions here tonight, but one of the things that we've been looking at in the finance team is the capital budget. Did discuss capital ordinance earlier in the year to fund some of the projects that are necessary to happen this year. And I just wanted to show the council this capital budget. We will be introducing a capital ordinance in July. And it's certainly not gonna include all of this. It's gonna include a couple of key things. It will probably include a new patrol vehicle and some of the smaller things. I do want to include, which is not listed on this, an amount for improvements in the central business district. I'm pretty comfortable with what that amount should be. The street sweeper, we might get one more year out of it, but this is gonna be, street sweeper is definitely coming up.
But will we get one more year out of Paul Cross?
So he looks pretty healthy. So, I hope so. So, this is a long list, and just for the edification of the public, I'll just run through a couple of these just to let you know kind of what we're looking at in the next. This is really a 5-year capital budget that we've asked the finance committee, the finance team, and the department heads to draft. So, we're looking at everything from new patrol vehicles. That's a $72,000 amount, which will happen probably this year. Another one in 2025. Another one in 2026. We will potentially look at the e-ticketing system, which includes software for the police cars. That's not too expensive. It's $25,000. We do need a new recycling truck. The current one dates to 2009. So, the new trash truck, apparently we've seen photographs of it. It's on the way. It should be here in the next couple of weeks. So I'm excited about that.
Grown bigger over the gestation period.
In my mind, it has. But no. So we're gonna be looking at trucks and backhoe. I mean, a lot of this stuff is heavy equipment for the Department of Public Works and the police department. We do have a wish list of things we would love to digitize the records for City Hall slowly but surely, to empty out the hundreds of boxes of stuff that are still in the attic and that City diligently goes through every year and gets rid of through the kind of the proper channels. Really just a lot of basic things that we're going to be looking at. But you can expect in the coming ordinance to see at least one police vehicle, probably about $75,000 for the improvements to the Central Business District. I will note as well, we got a little bit of bad news about the elevator at the library. So we had a bid out for that. And there's it looks as though the more prudent, this is an email I just got yesterday from Michael Burns. And it looks like probably rather than throw good money after bad, the real choice here is to purchase a new elevator, which is gonna cost about $200,000 for the library. The current elevator is probably close to 40 years old, and people have been stuck in it many times. So that's another thing that we're gonna be looking at, that I'm not ready to make that decision probably in July, but we're gonna have to make a decision about that. That is a safety issue, needs to be addressed. I would also note that at some point this year, we'll see how the bids come in for the painting of the library. Currently, we didn't get any bids for the lead removal and repointing of the library. We got 0 bids on that. So that RFP is going to be re-released on Monday. And the city architect is going to take a more vigorous approach to calling contractors and hopefully getting somebody who will be interested in that particular job. So, and I would remind people that we do have a request in from the state for an appropriation for the library. We'll probably know about that next, I guess the budget passes in July 1st, right? So I haven't heard anything about that. And given the kind of the state budget situation this year, I'm not entirely optimistic about that. So just really, I think I want you guys to take a look at the capital budget. I'm happy to share this document with anybody in the public who's interested in taking a look at it, knowing that it is a proposal. The things are not set in stone, but these are things that have been requested through our department heads as necessary capital expenditures in the next 5 years.
Will it be available online?
We can make it available. I don't see why not. This does not really include some of the stormwater capital projects that we're going to take a look at. When we have the final report from the stormwater feasibility study, you'll see kind of some of the projected capital costs that we anticipate over the next 5 years for that. Those numbers will be out on the 20th of June. And we'll begin to have conversations about the future of stormwater management in terms of capital and maintenance. So are there any questions I should ask you?
I'm glad to see on here, we have the audio system here on listed, we'll get some new microphones. I think that's a great improvement.
And I will say, just in terms of the budget itself, I know this was something that Judy had highlighted. We did put more money in the budget this year for maintenance of buildings. And today we had a department head meeting, and we're going to be making improvements, maintenance improvements in City Hall, for example, placing very badly worn carpeting, polishing the floors, things that we haven't done in years. So I'm looking forward to some of these smaller projects that really have a value in terms of when you walk in City Hall, what is it like, right? Are we proud of it? Or is it like 1970s asbestos tile floors, right? So I'm grateful for the decision of the council to invest a little bit more in just kind of how our buildings function and how they look. So all good stuff there. And then lastly, just in terms of discussion, I wanted to have a general conversation about grants. And this is something that I'm going to ask for a little bit of input from Cindy on. I think that we've had pretty good success on grants in the last couple of years. Certainly, all of the FEMA grants and the USDA grants were enormously helpful to the city. I'm not going to list all the grants, we've talked about them before, but I want to acknowledge and ask the council for help or advice, or the public, or Mayor Delvecchio or Mayor Fall about grants. So grants come across our desk. I get emails all the time about grants, and for a while we had a resilience team looking at all of the grants that came through from the DEP and kind of assessing them. And it takes time and it takes energy. And then it takes a lot of time to write grants and decide whether, you're actually in the running for a competitive grant. And so this is a very complex, laborious process by which we have to identify them, apply for them, wait to get them, and then administer them, which is oftentimes, it seems to me, that one of the most complicated parts of grants. So there are municipalities that have I'm not going to say a more systematic approach. We have an incredible team here of volunteers in the city and the city staff. But I wanted to bring this up because, is it possible that we have missed a grant or two, or that we've lost out on something because we didn't have the resources, or we didn't think that we were going to qualify, or I mean, there's a variety of reasons why these things may either go over our heads or why we may not have the time or the energy to apply to them. And I'm not suggesting that we hire a grant writer, but I want to have an honest conversation about what that means, and maybe we do want to hire a grant writer, I don't know, maybe we know enough people in the city to form a volunteer committee. And go through all the grants, federal grants and the state grants, I don't know, Karen, you tell me.
It's Millennium Strategies, and they did grant writing for us that are, you know, that's, you know, for money that's available. So, you know, and they present, we still get emails from them when they send us stuff about some grant opportunities. Ed and them, and they're very good, you know, plugged in on certain things to be able to do that. You know, I would like to see us focus a little bit more on money for hard stuff and not as many plans and not as much planning, which we can do. You know, lots of times, look, years ago, when you look at was government money that was available years ago, there used to be a lot more money available in the state budget. And there was a lot more opportunities of money that you could ask for. It was kind of more of an informal kind of a process. And that money, you know, ebbs and flows, you know, it hasn't flowed very well. It's not going to flow very well this year. You don't have a shot. Sometimes you have to really take a project, in my experience, and work it, you know, with your local representatives. I don't think that there's a magic answer when it comes to grants, but I do think that sometimes that, you know, somebody like Millennium can help you. I think also when you do apply for things, that what it requires is, you know, sometimes, look, a lot of folks that get towns that get awarded, you know, they'll kind of work it and advocate for themselves within the system. And, you know, that's also a very important thing to do as well. And I would never hold back of thinking that you wouldn't qualify or whatever, because you just kind of, I always say, you know, try it. And, you know, if you don't think your application is going to be good enough, oh, well, you know, you want to put it in. And so I wouldn't let, what do you call it, perfect be the enemy of the good or whatever. I don't know the way it goes, because, you know, really it's your advocacy for the money as well. And sometimes there's a little fudging between the lines of who gets what. So it's kind of something that I do for a living a little bit. So I, you know, think that, and also there's a new USDA liaison now, Jane Aselta.
And I think it was Jane that I met, yes.
Jane, yeah. Yeah, Jane was like, oh, you have some stuff, come see me, you know. So, but we can be happy to collaborate on that stuff, but there are these weird places that the city, you know, kind of were to be USDA, you know, but yeah, because we qualify.
Yeah, I mean, here's my experience, right? I used to work for a school and for 5 years I wrote grants. And so I have a little bit of experience in doing this, but the workload I have does not always fit into the schedule of when it's about. But the old approach to grant funding was you have a project, you go looking for a grant. You used to get books that were that thick and you would be able to go through the book and figure out who to apply for to, right? Now, the grant book comes to you and you have to figure out, do I have a project that fits into this? And sometimes we have an idea, but we don't have it in writing and we don't know what the total cost is. And then you're getting that notice in 2 weeks, you've got to get that grant. And I love Millennium Strategies, but I have to tell you, it's almost like I was writing the grant because they were not experienced in Lambertville. And so they were constantly pulling me out to give them the information that they needed to put into that grant. I might as well write it myself. So that was just my feeling because they were constantly calling me, you know. I think that it would be great to have some input from even maybe the governing body, you know, hey, I've got this idea. Like if we started at some of the work sessions and said, these are our goals for grants, and then as they come in, we can say, oh, we have this, you know? It makes it a lot easier.
So I just want to build on that point, because I think it's a really good one, and, you know, I give, Mayor Paul some chops here, because you know, she did a $2 million study with engineering up on Music Mountain for the federal appropriation, which she did not get, right? But we have that ready to go, and we have used that information 3 different times for grants. We asked for a DEP grant using all of that information, which we didn't get. Was a $900,000 ask. We asked for $450,000 the federal appropriation, which we did get. We submitted another $450,000 appropriation request through Congressman Keene's office this year, using that information. And so, you know, when I think back about what that probably costs to put together in terms of engineering and consultants, you know, it has value insofar as we still have all of that good data, and that's a great, and we've used it 3 different times.
So loudly, we
Right.
used it for that. I mean, that's our template.
So it's hard, because even with, you know, we've been working, you wouldn't believe it, but we've been having conversations about 406 mitigation grant here at the Justice Center for 2 years. And, you know, at some point, we have to engage the engineer to come up with a plan. We've got to pay for that in advance of the grant, right? So, you know, now we're at this point where we actually have, we engaged Doug we're paying him to come up with the design, and we've had conversations with FEMA. We're now having to do a, what's it called? Benefit cost analysis.
Yes, the benefit cost
Yeah,
analysis, you have to do that for everything.
To show that we're gonna qualify for this grant. So it's a lot of upfront work, and we had to plan for it, right? We were talking about what this would look like for a while, and you've got to have it in place when you ask for the grant, right? So that's one of the complications of kind of, I've seen of you know, requiring or requesting grants. So, you know, I don't know if the council wants, I don't want to have a long conversation about this necessarily tonight, but I wanted to mention it and get us thinking about this, because I don't want to be a mayor who not mistakenly, but doesn't realize an opportunity, or that doesn't have, that we don't have the capacity to really sort through and make a determination about what kinds of money that we can go after in terms of grants, right? Or the kind of grants, to your point, Councilwoman, right? You know, we don't have much in the way of, you know, beyond the IDA repair grants in terms of hard money for hard infrastructure, right? So.
Right, I mean, look, a lot of the grant, like there isn't, like think that there's grant money out there, and grant money is drying up more year after year, and the reason why it's all planning money is because that's the way, that's all there is left, is these grants to do these plans, that keep consultants like you know, consultants doing things, environmental group, you know, now, because there are these different funds from these nonprofit that then they get money from, and that's how their business operates. But, you know, there aren't a lot of, you know, a lot of, you know, capital program money out there, or, you know, it's very hard to get, you know, capital money from the state or from the federal government and a federal appropriation. Right, your congressman only can pick so many in the district, and that's what happens, you know. The state senate, you know, or US Senate, you know, that's another, but that's, you know, it's difficult, so it's not like, you know, people love to say, go get a grant, and there's not like, there isn't a plethora of grants out there. And a lot of the money, I have to say that, you know, the city that we're able to get were really kind of special, you know, special requests, you know, from different governors or commissioners that, well, you know, would have some money. And there isn't a lot of that money that used to be, but just isn't around as much, you know, so
Yeah.
bad budget year this year with the state, you know, 1 year, if New Jersey's ever flush with cash again, you know, when I was a youth, there was so much money that people just got money in the budget every year, and now it's few and far between.
I have a question. How does payment of, the grant getter, how do they get paid? I mean, they're not doing it for free like Millennium, right?
right? I mean, we paid them as, I'm.
Some of them only get, some of them only get paid if the grant's funded,
Yeah.
right?
The
So,
Millennium, when we brought them on board, we paid them $20,000 a year. And
Regardless. if they got it
regardless,
back.
yeah.
Right, and then, I work with these guys, folks that do stuff, marks in Washington and stuff, but it's dicey, they're doing it for bigger. Bigger communities
And
and,
that's part of it.
that's the
highly
thing.
competitive.
Well, we don't have the upfront money.
Well, and the other thing too is a lot of the grants, you know this, we get into it and you have to have over 5,000, a population over 5,000. We don't.
Right.
So what happens is we get into it, we start looking at it, oh, we could do this, this, and this, but then you start reading it and it's like, we don't qualify.
yeah.
Well, there was a couple that I looked at, that was one of those emails that you're talking about, we all got them in our inboxes. And it sounded like it was great until you read it and we wouldn't qualify for some reason. That could have been population, it could have not been, we.
There's always,
Yeah.
yeah,
Congressman Kane's letter to us, which was very nice, saying that we didn't, we were not chosen for the earmarks. Links to about 10 different possibilities, and I went through the links, and it just, none of them were really realistic, right? So, anyway, I don't want to chilly have this conversation. I want us to be thinking about it. And I don't want to miss opportunities, and I want to make sure that, there are ways that people have been more successful at this than we have. I'd love to.
One thing I was gonna suggest, I know you're taking some time off from Learnable Matters, but I might set something out in here, because we do have a lot of retired folks that would be that might wanna have the time to do this, and we've got a lot of very professionals in town. Because Lambertville is so close to Trenton, so a lot of those people know how to get those grants, so.
well, I will say, the Environmental Commission is very active, and while they're small
Okay.
grants, they're chipping away, and I think overall, making a big difference.
They get grants every year.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly the last.
And Marion Bourge,
Marion Bourge is getting grants all the time.
all the time, for new trees and things like that,
No, that's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
All in
But
the
yeah,
grant.
I know, when you get into these bigger places like Pew and all that, it's a whole different ballgame. But, in terms of the things that we have in, I can write them or help, bother people about this thing it sells. And you start, and it might not be year one with your congressman, but, it's after. They've been there, also, they get a little bit more seniority after they've been there a while. But you really need to have the relationship that they're gonna take you, because there were a lot of takers, there were a lot of applicants this year, and bigger towns and,
Yeah.
town,
Thank you for that conversation and consideration of the subject. We're gonna move on to announcements. As I've already noted, the the community project fund request was not recommended by Congressman Keenan's office this year. Convenience center hours, Saturday, June 1 and June 15 from 9 to noon, and Wednesday, June 26 from 3 to 5.
Can I trouble you for an update? An update on Public Works building, where we are.
Sure.
I'm not gonna ask you for every project.
Yeah,
being done.
I'm not prepared to speak to every project. I will
Just
project updates at the next meeting.
Oh, good. Point.
No, I'm happy to talk to this. So construction was slated to start last week, and it hasn't started. So I know that it's gonna start soon.
Okay.
The yard is prepared. They've done a lot of work over there. They've done a lot of clearing, cleaning. So I meant to reach out to Scozzari today. I did attend. So soon. And I'll certainly let everybody know via Google Matters that we're trying, and I will continue to post announcements and make requests. And I thought today's first reading was great. So I'm excited about, and we've got some people here who are going to be contributing as well. So I'm looking forward to reading those over the next 16 weeks.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure. We will now open the meeting up to the second public comment period. The same rules apply as before. You have 3 minutes. We would ask you to state your name and address for the record. And we're very happy.
Hi, I'm Rachel Pawlowski, 9 Ferry Street. Sorry for being late, missing the first round of questioning.
Can you
Um,
hold the mic?
Oh, sorry. So my question, it was probably answered and I apologize for missing it, but did anyone specify why the 40 units had to be together? Or, like, it was instead of sparse throughout the community?
If that's your only question, I'll answer it when we're done with the public comment.
Okay, that was just one. And then the second is, whenever it rains currently, my backyard turns into a lake. I did some like minor investigation and I found wild things like giant steel plates and 2 to 3 feet of concrete. And then underneath, it's just like cavernous, but it's not permeating down. And so whenever it does rain, I have like a little bit of a panic attack thinking it's just a matter of time before it gets into my home. I have video of it and I was just wondering if there's something that I could do as a homeowner, like grant wise, because after Ida, I did qualify for an SBA loan in order to move on all my mechanicals up. But you know, that's been like 25K of interest and I'm just like really struggling financially to make my home more resilient and I want to. So that was one of my questions from earlier too. It's like we're talking about all this resiliency upstream, but like I want to be proactive and build resilience downstream as well, you know, as a homeowner. And I have a decent sized yard for Lambertville. And so I would love to do things, but I just don't have the funds to do it. So it's fortuitous you're talking about grants. I don't know if there's some smaller grants for like homeowners, but I would be interested in hearing more about things that homeowners could do to build more resilient backyards. Yeah, thank you.
Sean Ellis, 21 Belvedere Avenue. I have a couple questions. One that came up tonight, I'm just curious, this is for council, and perhaps this gentleman, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Mike. When it comes to encouraging non-grass lawns, things that might be more absorbent, you know, in terms of runoff, I think that's what the conversation was about. For new development, that's set by the county. You're required to plant grass, right? And so I don't know if anyone has talked to the county because we wouldn't be able to do anything other than planting grass for new developments. I have $6,000 in escrow because the county, because I haven't done that yet because I have I have to do excavation. I have a perimeter drain issue, and it has to be excavated. So I know that that is something that probably should be looked into if you want to encourage things that are grass. So that's Hunterdon County.
Soil conservation district.
Soil conservation district, yes. So just want to bring that up. As far as you know, there was a mention of a stormwater management fund for small development. It made me remember.
We didn't stop it from her.
Okay. It made me remember that there's an affordable housing fund, and that has somewhere between $250,000 to $300,000 in it. I had to pay $6,000 into that when we built my house, as my neighbor did also, is because it's 1.5% of the total of the assessed value. Now, I did speak to Rick Convicino, the city tax collector, and he said that, you know, when I filled out the form, it says, it doesn't say assessed value, it says development cost. And so I put how much it cost us to build the house, and he rejected it and said, no, you have to put the assessed value. And he also told me that several developers have gotten away with only putting the development costs on that. So Lambertville lost a lot of money there. These were larger developments than mine. He brought it to the city's attention, and it was he never was able to get the information to make that assessment before it went through. So and I think that affordable housing fund could, right now I saw that it's almost it's basically $100,000 in just administration costs. I don't think there are I think it's helped people stay in town after they got left, you know, pushed out from Ida. I don't think it's really brought many people, there's not really any other costs other than administration, and that money should not be going to administration. It should be going to affordable housing, to keeping people in town, or, you know, helping people move to town that can't afford it here, right? So I think that that money could be used, to incentivize landlords, to maybe go, towards affordable housing, this is the kind of thinking that we need to be doing, not the big gigantic development kind of thinking, in my opinion. And, I know that, you mentioned 40 units, Mayor, but it is 28 is our obligation, not 40, so I just want to be clear on that. That's a little bit more manageable than 40. And then finally, I didn't hear anybody talk about the Finkel's property as a potential for affordable housing to date. So I don't know if any of you have thought about that as the potential for an overlay or redevelopment for affordable housing. So I think that's all my questions. Yeah.
Dave Bird, 255 Brunswick Avenue in Vanderbilt. Question, I think, for Cindy. All right, will the residents have to do anything to get the benefits of the co-op energy savings?
No, but if you don't want to participate, you have to opt out.
So we'll get a letter at some point.
Mhm.
Perfect, thank you. Back on the fisherman's mark, all right. You've been working us for a long time to get the taxpayers' monies back to us, okay? And I think it's important, particularly since we're under the market on what we're renting, so we're not making a lot of money. And my understanding is a government property has to be sold at market value. Is that correct?
We'll sell it at market
I'm sorry.
I will sell, well.
Go ahead. All right, that's my understanding. And so that should be a pretty, and it may be a real sellable piece that, people need to look at. When you're retired, you have some time. And so I took some time today, and I have some numbers for you, which you may find interesting. The existing Conard Hill, of Leonardville, the entire hill is about 55 properties. Okay, 55 homes, okay? And so 200, all right, would increase the density, by 4 times, okay? Cottage Hill as comparison, right, is about 100 homes. And on the issue of developer selection, I got a pretty good memory, and I believe in the recent past, there was discussion from this group. All right, about when when the developer was made up, you went out, you tried to get them. It was the city went out to get the developer. All right, and we can go back in the film, but I'm sure that was said, and I think it was actually the previous mayor had originally, and there wasn't a lot of interest, and therefore, this was who ended up, and that's who the negotiations has been with. So I'm not sure who it is, but we're getting 2 different messages. And as far as the courts, okay, I guess we can wait and see if the pressure, all right, keeps going, all right, to the court. But maybe another approach is to go to the court and say, look, we've had meetings here with 70, 80 people, and the people are up in arms. There's a lot of research. All right, we're going to need some more time to resolve this between the owner, the developer, and our folks. I think better to ask up front than to say, hey, we're gonna miss, we didn't get the homework done. And finally, perhaps, because this issue has been going on for so long, I'm talking about the whole, affordable housing, and we've been using the same developer firm, same, representative as the planner, all right, same attorneys maybe, I'm not sure the attorney may change. Maybe it's a time at some point, sometimes you've got to spend a little bit of money to bring in another team to either, confirm what's being done, okay, or to put some different directions on it, all right? What's been going on here, we're gonna have to spend we are, yes, but it's the taxpayers. All right, we're gonna be spending a lot of money, okay, one way or the other, it's gonna be a lot of money. All right, thank you. So maybe the time to take another look at the whole subject. Thank you.
Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. On the Fisherman's Mark issue, I don't know if that was the only interested party when we were talking about selling that, but it would be good for people to know that because there's been a fair amount of chatter wondering whether there has been anybody else who could express an interest and what's going on in terms of a different and more lucrative opportunity for the city faced with the kind of cost issues that we have. Number one. Number two, we now know the whole issue of affordable housing and space for affordable housing. Well, there's space right there, which if we wanted to be talking about affordable housing and whatever comes with that. And lastly, on that one point is many people have said the thing which Councilman Live did about how much money we don't have to spend because Fisherman's Mark does. I wish, do we actually have any information that tells us what that really is in terms of what we don't have to spend because Fisherman's Mark spends it? It would be handy. I'm not doubting that. I'm just wondering where is the information on that, because that question also comes up in sort of chat, or some people on the side of, oh, absolutely, and other people saying, well, wait a minute, we never saw. So I just put it out there because some of the confidence in the city is higher if people have an understanding of some of these pieces of the puzzle. And the last thing, and I got this partly from conversations yesterday around the planning board thing. This stormwater ordinance and all the things you're talking about and all the elements that would have to do with smaller development sizes. This might be a time to see what people actually think and whether they would actually be interested in pursuing things that will help with stormwater and flooding. To Councilman Stagen's point, there's people who are willing, but unless there's an opportunity for people besides in first reading and second reading, they never got a chance to come out with the kind of thinking that we saw last night, where when people are given a chance, they actually come up with some good ideas. So I would ask that that be factored into whatever you're doing. Thank you.
April with all 45 Delavan. I just want to say thank you for having this open forum where people can talk and meet each other. It's a good way to meet neighbors. When you were saying there's no room in the lower area for 40 units, affordable housing units, then it just made me think long term in the future that all affordable housing would then have to be up the hill. And then that sort of separates them. And I don't think the state actually means that by their intention of having more affordable housing in communities. So I think there's definitely a conversation that could be had with the state here of special consideration because of our geographical setup. Again, I just don't understand how our agreeing to this zoning of this development benefits the residents, the current residents of the town. I would just really like to hear more about that. And did I understand, was it briefly said yesterday that eventually the town will vote on adopting this zoning? So I thought that was mentioned that there's gonna be a vote. I may have completely misheard that because there are a lot of people here yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice. Anyone else in the room? Anyone online?
No one.
Okay, may I have a motion to close the public comment period, please?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Just a couple of comments here. 40 units on the hill, and it is not inclusionary. It's an apartment building, and we've discussed this a little bit. I'm happy to talk about it more offline. But in terms of the feasibility of constructing affordable units as a block, we talked about this. Michael Sullivan talked about this last night. 40 units in one block is kind of in one building is kind of like one of the minimal
minimum feasible in terms of kind of cost, and management. Um, the engineering, so in terms of your backyard, I think that it would be great for you to hire an engineer. One of the things the city has done and talked about is, we did pass an ordinance last year, which waives all permitting fees for any mitigation work that's done, proactive mitigation work that's done in the city. So, had you raised your mechanicals after we passed this ordinance, you would have had to pay any of the permitting or inspection fees for that. So we are trying to encourage resilience at the individual level. Grant funding is very, it's very, very hard to find at well, it's really kind of a micro level, right? You may be able to get some loans, but I'm not familiar with any kind of grant opportunities for that level of mitigation, especially when you have kind of like what seems to be a hard infrastructure issue. So,
And you might want to try reaching out to Blue Acres. Because they have several programs. I don't know what you would qualify for. You'd have to reach out to them. But I read something in one of their press releases that they not only. Sorry, I keep forgetting.
3 minutes early.
That's right. That they not only do buyouts, but they do mitigation.
Yeah.
okay.
I would love to see like the old, I think these homes on Ferry are some of the oldest in town, so they exist in plumbing or anything like that. And my suspicion is this was like the water retention for the whole block. But there's like at least 2 feet of concrete, pretty much my entire backyard, and then grass on top of it. So even the slightest rain, it literally turns into like a lake, and it's so scary. And when I removed the pavers when I first moved in, I thought I was doing like a good thing. And I was like, why did they just put pavers in this whole yard? And then I removed the pavers and watched my whole yard turn to a lake. So I'm like, oh, maybe that's why. So.
Thanks. We don't typically
Okay, I'm sorry.
back and forth. Moving on, Sean, I don't know the answer to your question about grass. I have no idea. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, Cindy's gonna be able to talk a little bit more about that. There are obviously parameters and strict guidelines for what those funds can be used for, whether it's administrative or I don't know if you could flesh that out a little bit, but
Well, that actually is an affordable housing. I can't remember the exact title, but it's a plan that's approved by this governing body and that has to be sent into the state. That plan, 26 South Main Street, put in an apartment that partially funded that. And there's been other apartments around here. When they go to planning or zoning board, they get their approvals. And then through those approvals, you get like $5,000 when you get your approval. And then you get $5,000 when you're midway through. And then you get another $5,000 when you are advertising. And when somebody moves in, you get your final. So it's an incentive for people to deed restrict an apartment on their property or even a house. So.
thank you.
People that incentive.
Well, it depends on, like, you have to meet certain criteria in order to do that. I can't answer that, whether it's advertised, or whether it's something that when you're going through the planning board to make that unit, that you're told that then.
If you contact us, we'll we can look into it.
Yeah.
Just a comment about 40 units instead of the 28 units. I made this remark last night, or made this observation. For me, this has always been about affordable housing, and I think that 40 units, 40 families in Lambertville, family units in Lambertville is better than 28, right? So I know that comes at a cost, but speaking only for myself, I try not to look at everything in terms of what our obligation is, but why aren't we exceeding our obligation? We're exceeding God, we're doing better in so many ways. And, this is a personal observation about affordable housing. And I don't know why we're striving for less. Striving is not the right word, but why we're settling for less in terms of units. So, the number of the 28, do we always want to do the minimum in terms of affordable housing? I say no to that.
But the 20 was actually only for that site. Our number is actually a lot bigger than.
Correct.
Right. So I think that was a little confusing. Our unmet obligation is higher than 40. So if we can do 40, we still need to do more.
The Pickles property, the 5-year thing is, we've already gone through 2 years. So 3 years, I believe, is left in that agreement. I reached out to the current owner and had a conversation with that person. I don't know what's planned. We've had no direction. We've had no discussion at city level. Obviously, anything that's built or over the period of time will trigger our affordable housing requirements if it's a 20% set aside or whatever it may be. So I don't have any information on the Finkel site. Just in terms of Dave's question, Fisherman's Mark, obviously the city wants to have a successful relationship with Fisherman's Mark, and we're also mindful that we want to sell it for market value, right? So that's our goal. And I'm not sure what you were talking to in terms of this idea that we may have chosen the developer. We did not choose the developer. Okay, Alien came to us.
Again,
We're not going to.
and you're not, you're not. I will bring back proof, all right, that was discussed before.
Dave, this is not an appropriate discussion for you to be having.
You call me a liar.
I'm not calling you a liar. I'm telling you what I know. So that's not the same thing. And I would please ask for decorum. Let's see. But Julie, I'm not really prepared to discuss kind of your points about Fisherman's Mark. I would say that, as I've already noted, explained in the meeting, the constraints of using that property at this point for affordable housing is, I think the property is too constrained based on what the city has already decided is happening with that property. I'm not prepared or able to quantify the benefits of Fisherman's Mark versus what the city has to, I mean, that's unknowable, right? We're one of the few municipalities left in the state that has a director of social services, that has a budget, that has access to resources, and Fisherman's Mark obviously has scores of clients and families in the city. To quantify that, it's not something.
Yeah, they do have statistics, I think, because they do an annual fundraiser.
Mhm.
So if you go on Fisherman's Mark or even call them, they could provide you with that information. I've seen it, I don't have it, but they have statistics that say how many families they feed. They're doing lunches for children throughout the summer who, may not have lunch, and they don't, like, when they do that, you don't have to show anything. They do it for anybody. So if you go on Fisherman's Mark's website, you'll get your answer, or you can call them.
Can I add something to that, Mayor?
Sure, please.
So I've worked a lot with them through Rolling Harvest Food Rescue, and they do a ton for the community. We also can't forget that Lambertville Academy is part of Fisherman's Mark, and anyone who has kids in school, their after school program, you're not going to find anywhere else that can handle that. And that's a huge resource for parents. It's a huge resource for families that can't afford that. It's a gem, it really is. And the amount, I don't know how they can even stay in business to do what they do and offer for kids, for families that have kids. So between what they do with food, what they do with ESL, and Fisherman's Mark, it's a ton. And so do I think they enrich the town? Absolutely. And so that's so can I quantify it? I can't. But can I say that Lambertville is better because they're here? Absolutely.
And thank you, Councilman. And just lastly, to April's question, the city council will in fact vote on the ordinance. It will be voted on at some point. The redevelopment plan, whatever its final iteration is, will be voted on by the city council as well. In terms of your question about just affordable housing, downtown, as I said earlier, there are mechanisms to provide for affordable housing downtown. So if, for example, a site downtown does get developed and it's got 15 units over 3 stories, 20% of those units must be affordable housing. So there are mechanisms, but there's just not the space really. I mean, I can't think of this. Well, short of 295 North Main, I couldn't think of a single space downtown where you'd be able to put 40 affordable units in one place.
There's no Finkel's, which we don't know.
Which we don't know. Yeah, I'm not going to comment about things because I don't know. But and does the council? I'm sorry, I forgot to give you guys the opportunity to speak during the first during the first public comment session. My bad on that. I don't know if it has any response or.
I'd like to just echo Jeff's remembering that it was D-Day today, and during my father-in-law was in the South Pacific, got elephantitis. My neighbor in Ocean City recently just passed away. It was very sad for us today to see him not there. He turned 100 and then he peacefully passed, but he was a World War II vet. We were sang him God Bless America, the 4th of July, very proud, nice man. in the world. He was a German POW at, an age when our kids are in college. And, they're just a braver of, this generation and that they, allow for us the freedom when there's such a big threat and we're all taking our, it really is, they're reading, right, the letter Dwight Eisenhower sent to the troops. They were going to the beaches today and it was just an absolutely, just wonderful piece of history that we shouldn't forget. Not this day, so
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other comments from the council? Okay. May I have a motion to we close public comments? No, may I have a motion to close public comment here?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No doubt for a motion to adjourn.
John.
Second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. For adjourned 9:20. Thank you.
You were the picture, like, Tyler, and Schindler.
It was. No, but I couldn't do it again.